That's the old passage to Ravenholm. We don't go there anymore. We don't go there anymore.
Has your experience in a video game ever affected how you went about IRL? Like, did you do things differently after playing a video game? I got a slight fear of open vents. I won't say it's a phobia, but more something that puts me on edge whenever I walk past an open ceiling panel. I blame this entirely on Half-Life. I know that headcrabs aren't real, but the idea of something small crawling through those vents and falling on top of me still creeps me out. Thanks, Valve.
Man, see that shot?
Oh, come on!
If you somehow haven't played the Half-Life series yet, headcrabs are the first enemies Gordon Freeman encounters in the games. They literally pop in at the start of unforeseen consequences, and remain a persistent threat for most of the early game. The goal of a headcrab is to pounce on a victim and reach their head, where they'll turn that poor soul into a zombie. Headcrab zombies are strong and resilient, but slow-moving.
Hello. My goodness.
When the Combine took over Earth in Half-Life 2, one of their suppression methods was to bombard an area with pods carrying headcrabs that would attack nearby inhabitants. Can't fight the Combine if you've got more pressing matters on your mind, like having those headcrab beaks press into your skull and convert your body to serve as a meat mecca for a facehugger knockoff. When Gordon made his way to the Resistance's headquarters, Alex took him on a brief tour of the facilities and pointed out the abandoned passage connecting Black Mesa East to Ravenholm. Going further down that hallway causes Alex to provide some more information about the old mining town.
It was an old mining town inhabited by some escapees from City 17. Believe me, that tunnel is sealed for a reason.
When the Combine assaulted Black Mesa East, Gordon and Alex tried to reach the rest of the Resistance, but some conveniently timed debris separated the two. Alex had instructed her pet/guardian dog to open the path to Ravenholm for Gordon. Don't know why that was her first choice and not using the tool that the game just introduced that was designed to move heavy objects, such as debris.
This is a gravity gun my father was talking about. You can call it the zero-point energy field manipulator if you really want to. It's designed for handling hazardous materials, but we mainly use it for heavy lifting.
As Gordon makes his way further into the abandoned path, he encounters obstacles intentionally placed to make the passage inaccessible for the average person. But Gordon has an MIT degree, a glorified PPE, and misappropriated construction equipment. So for him, this is just a walk in the park. The path leading up to Ravenholm does a great job from a storytelling standpoint to show how far the Resistance was willing to make sure no one could ever reach that town again. The elevator shaft is inoperable, while the service ladder is locked up. Crossing through the entryway at the very top leads to the infamous chapter. If you weren't sure what this place was and missed a semi-transparent title card, the discarded sign at the entrance is your last clue. The game's atmosphere takes on a darker tone in Ravenholm, with the lighting shifting into a nighttime palette. Observant players will find this transition sensible, as the beginning of Half-Life 2 seemed to suggest that Gordon was unfrozen by the G-Man and placed into City 17 sometime in the midday, with dusk occurring around the time of the previous chapter, Water Hazard. Non-diegetic music creeps in with dark synths, reminiscent of a John Carpenter track. As long as you're in Ravenholm, you're not playing an action shooter anymore. You're in a survival horror game now. Peering into the dark field outside of the mineshaft, you can spot a headcrab pod impaled into the ground. We don't need Alex to figure out what happened here. Half-Life 2 zombies have some new tricks up their blood-encrusted sleeves compared to their Half-Life 1 versions. They can play dead now, which can catch a new player off guard the first few times, but a more seasoned expert will be properly paranoid during this segment. To call back to the Half-Life 1 zombies' ability to break through cement walls, Half-Life 2 zombies can swipe at objects to throw them at Gordon, which can cause physical damage. Bisecting a zombie doesn't necessarily guarantee a kill. The zombie's torso could still be functional and crawl its way towards Gordon, or the head crab controlling the zombie could detach and attack on its own. You'll already know this before going to Ravenholm, but the sheer number of zombies in this level will really get you to appreciate the threat potential of a low-tier enemy. Also, their noises have been reworked, so they're now samples of a person crying out specific phrases, but played backwards. You can still hear them make sounds similar to their Half-Life 1 versions whenever they swing an object that's blocking their path. There's an achievement in Half-Life 2 that challenges a player to go through the entire Ravenholm chapter using only the gravity gun. Every time I boot up Half-Life 2, I try to accomplish this task, but I've never been successful. Well...
Oh shit, here we go again.
Luckily, the game is very generous with gravity gun ammo at the start of the chapter. There are buzzsaw blades decorating the walls of the nearby shed, as well as various gas tanks. One of the blades seems to have bisected a headcrab zombie and pinned its upper half against the wall. This is the game tipping off to the player what it expects of them during their stay in Ravenholm. If you're not going for the achievement, Ravenholm can be a fun temporary genre shift from the mostly run-and gunning that defines Half-Life 2's game loop. If you're like me and the prospect of being ambushed by zombies and headhunters fills you with absolute dread, you're gonna slowly trudge your way from room to room, carrying each physics object with you along the way. You can impale a saw blade in the most level geometry, so it helps to launch them into the next part of the level before jumping in yourself. I scoured the map for every medkit, saw blade, gas canister, radiator, car engine, cinder block, and red barrel I could find. Every one of these was precious cargo for me. As you make your way further into town, you'll come across death traps designed to efficiently decimate any zombies wandering nearby. Someone's setting these up, and you can hear his voice in the distance every now and then.
For it was said, they had become like these peculiar demons which dwell in matter, but in whom no light may be found.
It's not until you make your way to the courtyard outside of the local power station that you meet the architect of these contraptions.
But who is this? Another life to save? I'll keep my eye on you. More than that, I cannot promise.
There's a room across from the power station filled with zombies and supplies. One of the zombies is trapped in a fence enclosure, and it's a perfect guinea pig to showcase the gas and fire physics simulated in the source engine. Gas tanks can be opened and closed with the turn of a valve, and a spark emitting from exposed wiring can ignite a fire if a nearby gas canister is opened. This mini-tutorial teaches a player how to turn off the fire hazards strewn about this part of the map, which serve as gates of sorts to keep zombies from wandering around in the courtyard. Gordon has to go to the top floor of the station to shut off the electric generator that's preventing him from climbing up a ladder in the next area. The rooms leading towards the electric switch introduce one of the worst enemy types in the game: poison headcrabs. These hissing bastards attack like any other headcrab, but their bite is much worse, because they'll always drop Gordon to 1 health point. Poison headcrabs can never kill Gordon, but in later encounters they end up getting paired with other enemies that can finish the job. As long as you keep an ear out for their signature hissing sound, you won't be caught off guard. According to Half-Life Raising the Bar, playtesters got conditioned to immediately prioritize poison headcrabs whenever they heard its cry. Don't let your guard up when you leave the power station either, because 2 poisoned headcrabs drop down at the entrance. Dick move, Valve.
Oh, come on!
The next area introduces a new kind of trap that also serves as a makeshift elevator. It also properly introduces Gordon to the caretaker of the area, Father Grigori.
Better and better! I am Father Grigori. You have already met my congregation.
Coming back to Half-Life 2, I can't help but notice that he shares the same voice actor as Bill from Left 4 Dead.
Well done, brother. Make free use of my traps, but take care not to fall in them yourself. Behind you! In Ravenholm, you do well to be vigilant. Ain't seen anything like this before.
Jesus, don't let that stop you from smearing it all over yourself.
They're changing.
God damn it, Bill! Oh, it stinks!
Which is appropriate because a couple of later segments inspired Left 4 Dead's game loop. But first, another new headcrab variant, the fast headcrab. These elongated versions move faster as their name implies. If you're observant in the room that introduced the fire traps, you could find one hanging on a hook. My one criticism is that I think they should have a unique cry to distinguish them from their regular versions, like the poisoned headcrabs. Not a deal breaker, just something I always thought was overlooked. Once Gordon leaves this window, the game starts mixing up headcrab encounters, with a few poisoned headcrabs lurking on the opposite side, some regular zombies patrolling the adjacent ledge, and fast headcrabs scurrying at the ground level. The next area introduces a new zombie type, the fast zombie. Fast headcrabs seem to mutate their hosts far differently than standard headcrabs. They've lost most of their mass, but can now pounce just like a regular headcrab. These guys inspired the hunters of Left 4 Dead. Fast zombies almost always drop a fast headcrab upon death. Also, the noises they make are terrifying. Just after encountering fast zombies, Father Grigori decides to bless Gordon with a new weapon, the shotgun. Unfortunately, we won't be using it for the time being.
A man after my own heart. Here, I have a more suitable gun for you. You'll need it. Catch! Good. Now, keep it close. My advice to you is, aim for the head.
The self-imposed challenge makes some encounters a lot more time-consuming and stressful than they need to be. I'm gonna take this time to air out my grievances with a gravity gun. This is one of the most important and iconic weapons in all of gaming. It's up there with the Power Star, the Super Shotgun, the Quake Rocket Launcher, and the God Hand. But holy shit, it's an unwieldy sumbitch. I'm not gonna deny that I was being a little too unreasonable with my inability to let things go as I progressed in this level. I fell off of rooftops a couple times because I wanted to retrieve some lost medkits and saw blades. But my main gripes with the GG is that primary fire is unreliable whenever I'm using it to shoot down pouncing headcrabs. It takes a bit for the gun to recognize that the thing I'm pointing at can be gravity gunned. The other thing is that manipulating an object while doing complex movement, like climbing up a ladder, can cause the camera to bug out or the object itself to shoot out of my possession. I know that this is the first time any game has tried to factor physics simulation in real-time gameplay, but I'd loved it if I could carry an entire container full of my medkits and hop around the rooftops, instead of shooting them one by one in a way that prevented them from bouncing too hard off the walls, so that they'd fall off the roof. Again, my struggle was entirely self-inflicted, but I'm an event all the same. The later segments of Ravenholm involve set pieces where Gordon has to activate a device and wait for its arrival while surviving against an onslaught of zombie attacks. This is where Left 4 Dead got its entire game loop. The bottom of this elevator introduces the last zombie variant, the Poison Zombie. This guy carries 4 poison head crabs on his back that he can throw at Gordon and cause a poison effect. He's also hardier than the other variants and requires a few more hits in order to drop. The worst area for me was the last open courtyard, where I had to run into one shack to pull a lever in order to run along the rooftops to jump onto a platform that I had moved my previous lever pulling. Again, this would be more than manageable on a standard run, but my scavenger mindset drew this area out for way too long. What sucked about it was that when I finally made it to the other side, the fire escape gave way and created a shortcut from the starting point. That means I could have left all of my medkits and other gear at the far end of this street, pulled the lever, ran along the walkways, jumped across to the other side, and brought my stuff with me without dealing with the poison zombies and endlessly spawning standard zombies that lurked in the corners. Am I being unreasonable with all of my hoarding? Surely the level does its best to provide the player with enough supplies to make it out of Ravenholm without having to do what I did. And you're right, the game is pretty good at stretching out the supplies to make sure that you can survive this experience without having to murder hobo your way through. But there's a method to my madness. Once Gordon makes his way through this industrial office and fights off this attic full of head crabs...
Oh, come on!
No, not that attic full of head crabs.
Oh, come on!
Father Grigori tells him to hold off on this rooftop, while it turns the crank to move the gondola along for Gordon to cross over. While it's turning the crank, Gordon has to survive a swarm of fast zombies. This is like the forerunner for every Left 4 Dead standoff. Now, if I were using the shotgun, this would be a cinch, but we're going for the GG only achievement, and I somehow lost like 80% of my saw blades in the infinite zombie hub, so now I gotta make do with only one saw blade and one raid with only one saw blade. I left all of my remaining medkits on that rooftop, but it's all good because Grigori thought ahead and brought 2 along with him.
Greetings, brother. And so we meet at last. You are to be commended for avoiding my traps. The work of a man who once had too much time on his hands and now finds time for nothing but the work of traps. I suspect you have little wish to remain in Ravenholm, so I will show you to the mines. As for me, a shepherd must tend to his traps, especially when they have grown unruly.
This part is one of the high points of the chapter, as you follow Grigori along the Ravenholm cemetery, which is chock full of saw blades, cinder blocks, and meat hooks. You have to hold out as Grigori thins out the horde that's shuffling through the firewall. Eventually, he leads you out of the cemetery and decides to confront the rest of his flock on his own.
Farewell, brother! I fear I deliver you to a darker place. May the light of lights illuminate your path. Look to your own salvation.
Godspeed, Father Grigori. You were the truest G in this game. The last part of this chapter always screwed me out of the achievement, because I thought that once I made it to the mine shaft full of head crabs, I was free to use my guns. It's been a while since I played this level and forgot how to progress, so I may have put myself at risk when it wasn't necessary when I practically exterminated the entire cave. Unfortunately, this area is one of those infinitely spawning arenas, so it's a waste of time and energy to do so. The intended path is to jump off this platform onto these support beams and drop into the flooded shaft. Be careful of the fast and poison head crabs around the blind corner. I had to look at a guide to figure out what to do next. I thought that I needed to ride the shaft up with the barnacle in order to progress, but I couldn't get a beat on it with my gravity gun and kept getting chewed up. Turns out that there's an underwater passage that leads to the actual way out. This is the home stretch. I saved one more complaint about Half-Life 2 for this portion. I know it's a holdover from the first game, but I really think that tying all of the suit's functions to a single battery source gets in the way of the experience sometimes. I can't always have the flashlight on during Ravenholm, because the power runs out fast, and this makes it hard to actually see what's in front of me, and enjoy some of the scarier parts of the level. Same goes for having a flashlight on while swimming. I end up swimming in the dark and waiting for my reserve power to refill instead of pushing forward. There's a minecart with one of Father Gregori's weed whackers attached to it, waiting at the base of this incline. Activating it causes the cart to propel itself up the track while the blade spins around. The trick is to move up at intervals as the cart touches the base and bait the zombies to walk towards the track and let the blade do its work. Once Gordon reaches the top, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Don't get fooled by that uplifting music. Hear that? One last poison head crab is waiting at the top of the mine entrance.
Oh, come on!
This is my favorite chapter in Half-Life 2. It's so tense and a tonal departure from the rest of the game, but it doesn't feel out of place. It's definitely leaning into zombie tropes with its use of head crab variants, which allow the game to incorporate both Romero-type walking zombies and 28 Days Later type runners. It all takes place in a single night, and the game's pace naturally leads into that transition, as the previous outdoor sections show the passage of time through the different lighting conditions. Also, Ravenholm reminds me a lot of Bloodborne's Old Yharnam. Both areas have been cordoned off because of an outbreak, and both areas are overlooked by a single individual who pledges to watch over his flock, though they go about it in different ways.
As for me, a shepherd must tend to his flock, especially when they have grown unruly.
You there! Hunter! Didn't you see the warning? Turn back at once. Old Yharnam, burned and abandoned by men, is now home only to beasts. They are of no harm to those alive. Turn back, or the hunter will face the hunt.
What makes We Don't Go to Ravenholm particularly impressive to me is that it shifts the tone of Half-Life 2 without shifting its mechanics. It's still a first-person shooter, but the level design, enemy placement, and item allocation have been tweaked in such a way as to make the player feel like they're Will Smith in I Am Legend. I don't think I need to convince anyone to play Half-Life 2. It's a cultural touchstone in terms of storytelling in games, and you probably already have it in your Steam library from one of the various bundles that Steam or Humble provide. But I do want people to go back to Ravenholm and enjoy the atmosphere and gameplay again. It's such a cool moment in Half-Life for me that later chapters and entries just can't compete. So now that I've gone through this meat grinder of a level with only my gravity gun, what's next? How about we bool on those zombies one more time, but with all that firepower we never used?
My advice to you is, aim for the head.